Welcome back. In part uno, we saw a 20-year-old become king, secure Greece, and win his first battles against the Persian Empire. But now, we get to the truly extraordinary part of his story. The year is 332 BC. Alexander stands on the Mediterranean coast, staring at an island fortress that has stood unconquered for 2,000 years. Military experts called it impossible. His own generals begged him to just move on. But Alexander was about to do something so audacious, so unprecedented, that we can still see the results today. 20th, let's dive in. After defeating Darius III, Alexander made a brilliant strategic decision. Before marching deeper into Persia, he would secure the entire Mediterranean coast. Why? This shows Alexander's military genius. The Persian fleet was still incredibly powerful. If Alexander just marched inland, Persian ships could cut his supply lines, land armies behind him, or even support rebellions back in Greece. So, Alexander decided to deny the Persian fleet every single port, and that meant conquering the city of Tyre. Located in modern-day Lebanon, Tyre is one of the oldest cities in history. Back then, it was an island fortress, sitting half a mile from the shore, protected by walls 150 feet high. It had never been successfully besieged. Alexander asked them to surrender. The Tyrians refused, confident their island stronghold was impenetrable. So, Alexander did the impossible. He decided to build a land bridge to the island. For 7 months, his army undertook a massive engineering project. They demolished the nearby city of Old Tyre for building materials, dumping thousands of tons of rock, wood, and rubble into the sea. They built a causeway 200 feet wide, stretching half a mile across the water to the island. On this causeway, they constructed massive siege towers on wheels, some reaching 150 feet high, as tall as the city walls. The Tyrians fought back desperately. They sent ships to attack the workers. They lit the giant siege towers on fire. They even poured boiling sand down from the walls onto the attackers. But Alexander adapted. He built his own warships to protect the construction. He designed new siege weapons, and month after month, the land bridge grew longer. Finally, in July 332 BC, after 7 long months, Alexander's forces breached Tyre's walls. The city fell. 8,000 defenders were killed, and 30,000 citizens were sold into slavery. And here's the truly extraordinary thing. The causeway Alexander built is still there. Over the centuries, sand and sediment built up around it. Today, Tyre is no longer an island. It's a peninsula, permanently connected to the mainland. Alexander literally changed geography. With Tyre conquered, the powerful Persian fleet had nowhere left to dock, nowhere to resupply. Persian naval power collapsed without a single major sea battle. Alexander had secured his rear. Now, he could march into the heart of Persia. But first, he made a detour that would change everything. He marched to Egypt, and what happened there would convince him he wasn't just a king. He was a god. The Egyptians welcomed Alexander as a liberator. They had been conquered by Persia decades earlier and hated Persian rule. Alexander showed great respect for their culture. He made offerings to Egyptian gods and was even crowned pharaoh in a traditional ceremony. But then, Alexander did something mysterious. He traveled 300 miles across the harsh Libyan desert to visit the Oracle of Ammon at Siwa, one of the most sacred sites in the ancient world. When he arrived, the priest greeted him with the traditional salutation for a pharaoh, as the son of Ammon. Now, this is crucial. In Greek religion, Ammon was equivalent to Zeus, the king of the gods. The priest called Alexander the son of a god. From that moment on, Alexander believed, or at least claimed, that he was divine. Some say this was just clever propaganda. Others think he truly believed he was a demigod, like his hero Achilles. Either way, it worked. Stories spread across his army and his empire. Alexander wasn't just a conqueror. He was chosen by the gods. Before leaving Egypt in 331 BC, he founded a new city that would become one of the greatest in the ancient world. Alexandria, home to the legendary library and the great lighthouse. It was the first of over 70 cities he would found, spreading Greek culture across 3 continents. While Alexander was in Egypt, Darius III was preparing for revenge. For 2 years, the great king gathered the largest army the world had ever seen. He had chosen the perfect battlefield to destroy Alexander once and for all. October 1st, 331 BC, the plain of Gaugamela in modern-day Iraq. This is it, the decisive battle. Darius had chosen his ground carefully. A vast, flat plain. His army was massive, with estimates ranging from 100,000 to 250,000 men. He had 200 scythed chariots, with spinning blades on their wheels designed to slice through infantry. And he had 15 war elephants. Terrifying creatures most of Alexander's men had never seen. Darius had even flattened the ground to give his chariots a clear run. Alexander had just 47,000 men. The night before the battle, Alexander's generals were terrified. They begged him to launch a surprise attack at night, when the Persian numbers wouldn't matter as much. Alexander refused, famously saying, "I will not steal victory." This wasn't just about honor. It was a message. "I'm so confident, I'll beat you in broad daylight, on the ground you picked yourself." Alexander's battle plan at Gaugamela was pure genius. His goal was to draw the Persian cavalry out to the sides, creating a gap in their center. Then, he would strike at Darius himself. His formation was an echelon, with his flanks bent backwards to prevent being surrounded, and a strong reserve line hidden behind the main force. As the battle began, Darius sent his scythed chariots charging forward. But the Macedonians had a plan. The phalanx simply opened its ranks, creating channels. The chariots sped through harmlessly and were quickly surrounded and neutralized by infantry in the rear. Next, the cavalry battle. Alexander led his elite companion cavalry far out to the right, moving away from the center. Darius's cavalry commanders took the bait and chased him, trying to outflank him. But this was exactly what Alexander wanted. It stretched the Persian line wider and wider. And then, Alexander saw it. A gap had opened in the Persian center, right where King Darius stood on his golden war chariot. He seized the opportunity. Alexander wheeled his cavalry into a wedge and charged directly at the Persian king. Horses trampled the royal guards. Spears flew. The companions smashed through the line. Darius, seeing Alexander's cavalry breaking through his personal guards and heading straight for him, panicked. For the second time, he fled the battlefield. And just like before, when the Persian soldiers saw their god-king running for his life, their morale shattered. The entire army collapsed. The Persian Empire, which had existed for over 200 years, was effectively finished. Alexander was now proclaimed King of Asia. He controlled Babylon, Susa, and the ceremonial capital of Persepolis, which he burned to the ground. He captured the entire Persian treasury on unimaginable fortune. Alexander was just 25 years old. Most conquerors would have stopped. But Alexander wasn't most conquerors. He wanted to reach the ends of the earth. He pursued Darius, who was soon assassinated by one of his own generals. Alexander gave his old rival a royal burial and then hunted down and executed the traitor. But instead of going home, Alexander pushed eastward. For the next 4 years, he campaigned through modern-day Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, facing brutal guerrilla warfare and harsh mountain conditions. In 326 BC, he invaded India. At the Battle of the Hydaspes, he faced King Porus, who commanded a terrifying army with 200 war elephants, the tanks of the ancient world. Alexander won through brilliant tactics, panicking the elephants, which turned and trampled their own troops. Alexander was so impressed by Porus's bravery that he allowed him to continue ruling his kingdom. But after this victory, Alexander wanted to push even further east, to the Ganges River. His army refused. After 8 years of constant war, thousands of miles from home, his soldiers had finally had enough. Mutiny. For the first time in his life, Alexander was forced to turn back. He began the long march home, but he would never see Macedonia again. In June of 323 BC, in the city of Babylon, Alexander fell ill after a long banquet. He died 13 days later. He was only 32 years old. He had not named a successor. When asked on his deathbed who should inherit his vast empire, Alexander supposedly whispered, "To the strongest." His words triggered 40 years of civil war as his generals fought over the pieces of his kingdom. So what did Alexander achieve? In just 13 years, he conquered an empire stretching from Greece to India. He founded over 70 cities, spreading Greek language and culture across the known world. He never lost a single battle. He created a new era of history, the Hellenistic Age, a fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures that would dominate for the next 300 years. By the age of 30, he had forged one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories of the world's greatest figures. See you next time.